The decision that made Brunson speak. Jose Alvarado didn't just turn down $4.5 million, he lit a match inside the New York Knicks locker room, and the one player who noticed first was the man who had already sacrificed more than anyone. Because when the news broke that Alvarado was declining his $4.5 million player option and preparing to sign a new 3-year deal worth more than $14 million to stay with the Knicks, most fans saw a simple contract story. A role player bet on himself. A hometown kid got rewarded, a champion stayed in New York. But Jalen Brunson saw something deeper. He saw the difference between taking less for the team and using the team's success to raise your own price, and that is why his reaction hit so hard. Brunson was not just another teammate watching from the side. He was the face of the franchise, the Finals MVP, the captain, the player who had left an enormous amount of money on the table so the Knicks could keep their championship core alive. He had made the kind of financial sacrifice most superstars would never even consider. Not for headlines, not for applause. But because he believed New York had a real chance to build something bigger than one season. Then Alvarado, the backup guard who became a playoff hero, turned around after the championship run and made it clear he had to get paid. That was the moment everything changed. Because this was not just about Jose wanting security. And it was not just about Brunson being upset. This was about two different NBA survival stories colliding inside the same locker room. One man gave up money before the trophy came. The other earned his leverage because of what he did when the trophy was on the line. And honestly, both sides made sense. Alvarado had every reason to believe he was worth more. He was undrafted, overlooked, underestimated, and still found a way to become one of the most important players in the biggest comeback of the NBA Finals. When New York needed life, he gave them energy. When the Knicks were drowning, he gave them pressure, pace, and belief. But Brunson had every reason to react because he knew the entire Knicks championship machine existed because somebody had already chosen sacrifice over maximum money. So now the question becomes uncomfortable. Was Alvarado proving his value, or was he testing the culture Brunson paid so much to build? Before we go deeper, tell me where you're watching from right now. Are you watching from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, or somewhere else? Drop your city in the comments. And if you think Alvarado was right to chase the new deal, comment 1. If you think Brunson had every right to call it out, comment 2. Also, make sure you subscribe, because this story is not just about one contract. It is about loyalty, money, pressure, and what really happens after a team finally becomes champion. Come on, on continue. Dursta, the undrafted kid nobody wanted. Before Jose Alvarado became the man at the center of New York's loudest offseason debate, he was the kid the league passed on completely. 60 picks came and went in the 2021 NBA draft, and not one team called his name. Not one front office looked at his fire, his defense, his leadership, and said, that is worth a pick. For a lot of players, that night breaks something. For Alvarado, it built something dangerous. He came from Brooklyn, carried New York toughness everywhere he went, and played like every possession was a personal argument with the people who doubted him. At Georgia Tech, he was not the tallest, not the flashiest, and not the most marketable prospect, but he was impossible to ignore. He defended like rent was due. He talked. He pressured. He stole the ball from players who thought they were safe. He became ACC Defensive Player of the Year because his game was built on disruption. But the NBA still said no. That rejection became fuel. When he landed with the New Orleans Pelicans on a 2-way deal, he did not treat it like a small opportunity. He treated it like the only door he needed. In the G League, he proved quickly that he did not belong hidden away. In New Orleans, he became a fan favorite almost immediately because his energy changed the temperature of games. Then came the nickname, Grand Theft Alvarado. It was funny at first, but then it became real. He would hide near the baseline, wait for a ball handler to relax, then appear from behind like a shadow and steal the possession before anyone understood what happened. Those plays went viral because they looked impossible. But they were not tricks. They were preparation, timing, courage, and a player refusing to be invisible. That is what made Alvarado special. He did not need the offense built around him. He did not need 20 shots. He did not need superstar treatment. He needed minutes, trust, and a chance to turn chaos into momentum. And once New York finally brought him home, that same chaos became part of a championship story. Coming home to New York, when the Knicks traded for Jose Alvarado, it was more than a basketball move. It felt like a city reclaiming one of its own. He was not just another bench guard arriving to fill minutes. He was Brooklyn. He was Queens. He was playground pressure, public housing hunger, and New York pride wrapped into one 6-foot storm of energy. The Knicks did not bring him in because they needed a star. They already had Jalen Brunson. They already had Karl-Anthony Towns. They already had a core strong enough to chase something real. What they needed was a spark, a pressure release, a player who could come off the bench, change the pace, irritate ball handlers, and give Madison Square Garden a reason to stand up before the Stars even touch the ball. Alvarado gave them that immediately. Within days, the city felt him. He played like every loose ball belonged to his family. He defended like every matchup was personal. He pushed the tempo, hit shots, picked up full court, and gave the Knicks something they had been missing. A backup guard who did not just survive playoff-style basketball, but seemed to enjoy the pressure. That mattered to Brunson. Because Brunson had carried so much. Every trap, every double team, every late clock possession, every expectation in New York seemed to land on his shoulders. Alvarado did not replace that burden, but he reduced it. He gave Brunson breath. He gave the offense another angle. He gave the defense another dog, and New York fans love dog. Not fake tough guys. Not players who talk when the game is easy. Real dogs. Players who dive, bump, chase, annoy, and refuse to back down. Alvarado was built for that relationship with the Garden. But what nobody knew in those first few weeks was that this mid-season addition would eventually become much more than a nice story. He would become a finals piece, a comeback symbol, a contract problem, and eventually the reason Brunson had to speak, the night everything changed. Game 4 of the NBA Finals should have buried the Knicks. They were down big, the Spurs had control, the building felt nervous. The kind of nervous that starts in the lower bowl, spreads through the arena, and suddenly makes every missed shot sound heavier than it should. A 2-9 point deficit in the finals is not just a bad score. It is a warning siren. It tells a team that the series is slipping. It tells the crowd that history may not be on their side. It tells every player on the bench that this might become the night people remember for the wrong reason. Then Jose Alvarado entered the story. He was not supposed to be the hero. That is what makes it unforgettable. This was Brunson's team. This was the Knicks' championship moment. This was supposed to be decided by stars, not by an undrafted guard who had spent most of the postseason fighting for limited minutes. But pressure does not care about salary. Pressure only reveals who is ready. Alvarado was ready. He brought speed first, then pressure, then belief. He hit shots that kept the Knicks alive. He attacked closeouts. He moved the ball before the defense could reset. He made San Antonio uncomfortable. And maybe most importantly, he let Brunson breathe. Suddenly, the Spurs could not load everything toward the Finals MVP. Suddenly, there was another guard forcing rotations, another body creating chaos, another voice telling New York this game was not over. Every possession began to feel different. The crowd felt it, the bench felt it, Brunson felt it, the Spurs felt it too, and that may have been the most important part. Their control started to crack, their comfortable lead turned into tension, their tension turned into panic. And once Madison Square Garden smelled panic, the entire night changed. Alvarado did not just help the Knicks come back, he changed what everyone believed he was worth. Before that fourth quarter, he was a valuable role player. After it, he was a championship piece. And championship pieces get paid. From backup guard to finals hero. The hardest thing for any role player is turning a small window into a life-changing moment. Stars get time. Stars get touches. Stars get rhythm. Role players get fragments. A few minutes here, a defensive assignment there, one open shot that may not come again. Jose Alvarado built his whole career inside those fragments. So when Game 4 gave him a chance, he did not ease into it. He attacked it. He played like a man who understood that this was not just about winning one game. This was about proving every front office wrong. Every scout who called him too small, every team that passed on him, every person who saw his energy but missed his value, that fourth quarter became his evidence. He was not just running around, he was controlling tempo. He was not just hitting shots, he was bending the defense. He was not just bringing emotion, he was turning emotion into execution. That is rare. A lot of players can play hard. Fewer can play smart while their heart is racing and the season is on the line. Alvarado did both. And when the Knicks completed the comeback, the story changed instantly. Fans were not talking about him like a nice bench piece anymore. They were talking about him like someone who belonged in the team's future. Coaches praised him. Teammates respected him. The city embraced him, and the market noticed. That is the part people sometimes forget. In the NBA, moments become money. A playoff possession can become leverage. A finals performance can change negotiations. One quarter can shift how agents, executives, and owners see a player's value. Alvarado knew that. So when he looked at that $4.5 million player option, it no longer looked like security. It looked like yesterday's number. It looked like a contract for the player he had been before the finals, not the player New York had just watched save their season. That is why he walked away. Not because he hated the Knicks, not because he wanted drama, because for the first time, the league had finally seen what he always believed about himself. He was worth more. Brunson's sacrifice. To understand why Jalen Brunson reacted the way he did, you have to understand what he gave up. This was not a superstar complaining because a teammate got attention. This was not jealousy. This was not ego. This was a leader looking at the financial structure of a championship team and remembering that he was the one who made the first sacrifice. Brunson could have chased every dollar. Nobody would have blamed him. In the modern NBA, stars usually take the maximum money and let the front office figure out the rest. That is normal, that is expected, that is business. But Brunson did something different. He signed early. He accepted less than he could have demanded later. He gave New York flexibility at the exact moment flexibility mattered most. That decision helped the Knicks keep pieces together, make moves, and build a roster deep enough to survive the brutality of a championship run. That is not just leadership in speeches. That is leadership in number, and the number was massive. When a player leaves that much money on the table, it becomes part of the team's culture. It sends a message to everyone else. We are not just collecting checks here. We are building something. We are choosing winning. We are protecting the group. We are trying to turn a good season into a championship window. Brunson lived that message. He carried the offense. He absorbed criticism. He became the face of basketball in New York. And when the Knicks finally reached the top, his sacrifice looked legendary. The money he did not take had turned into depth, roster balance, and eventually a ring. Then came Alvarado's situation. From Brunson's point of view, the timing was impossible to ignore. The same team that existed because of his discount was now being asked to reward another player who had raised his value during that title run. Again, Alvarado was not wrong, but Brunson could see the tension clearly. If everyone starts renegotiating the sacrifice after the trophy arrives, how long can the culture survive? That was the question behind his reaction. And that is why one contract became a locker room story. Two truths in the same locker room. The reason this story became so powerful is because there is no clean villain. That is what makes it feel real. Jose Alvarado was not wrong for wanting security. Jalen Brunson was not wrong for protecting the culture. Both men were standing on truth. The problem was that their truths collided. Alvarado's truth was simple. He had fought for everything. He went undrafted. He earned his role the hard way. He came home to New York, helped win a championship, and delivered when the Knicks needed him most. In a league where careers can change overnight, he had every right to lock in a longer deal and make sure his value was recognized. That is not selfish. That is survival. Brunson's truth was different. He had already proven his loyalty through sacrifice. He had taken less so the Knicks could be more. He had helped create the exact environment that allowed Alvarado to shine. So when Alvarado publicly leaned into the idea of getting paid, Brunson heard more than a contract statement. He heard a challenge to the standard he had set. That is not bitterness. That is accountability. And that is where the tension lived. Because championship teams are built on talent, but they survive on trust. Players need to believe the person next to them is chasing the same thing. They need to know that the front office has a plan. They need to feel that money, ego, role, and recognition will not quietly pull the locker room apart after the celebration ends. The Knicks had just won. But winning does not erase pressure. Sometimes it creates a new kind. Now, everyone wanted credit, everyone had leverage, everyone had a story, everyone had a number. And in the middle of it all stood Brunson, trying to protect the fragile thing he had helped build. Alvarado said in his own way, "I proved I belong." Brunson said in his own way, "Do not forget what made this possible." Both statements mattered, and New York had to find a way to honor both before the story became bigger than the team. The Knicks' dangerous money problem. The Knicks' real enemy was not Jose Alvarado. It was not Jalen Brunson. It was the salary structure waiting behind every decision. Championship teams do not just fight opponents. They fight the cap sheet. They fight the second apron. They fight the price of keeping success together. That is where New York's front office found itself trapped. Keeping Alvarado made basketball sense. He gave the Knicks energy, defense, pace, and playoff toughness. He connected with the city. He had just helped deliver one of the most important moments in franchise history. Letting him walk after that would have felt cold, maybe even foolish. But paying him also meant something. Every dollar given to Alvarado was a dollar unavailable somewhere else. Every extra year shaped future flexibility. Every contract decision affected the next free agent, the next trade, the next role player, the next chance to improve the roster around Brunson. That is why Brunson's sacrifice mattered so much. It had bought New York breathing room. But breathing room is not unlimited. A championship roster becomes expensive fast because winning raises everybody's value. The stars get praised, the role players get noticed, the bench pieces become targets. Suddenly, the same players nobody talked about in February become essential in June. That is exactly what happened with Alvarado. His finals moment made him valuable, but it also made him complicated. The Knicks wanted to reward him without breaking the structure. Alvarado wanted long-term respect without leaving home. Brunson wanted the team-first culture to stay intact. Ownership wanted to avoid financial punishment. The front office had to somehow make all of those things true at the same time. That is not easy, and it revealed a brutal reality about the modern NBA. Winning a championship is hard. Keeping a championship team together may be harder, because after the parade, the emotions fade and the numbers remain. Agents call, deadlines move, options get declined, rumors spread, and every player starts asking what their sacrifice is worth. For the Knicks, Alvarado's deal was not just a contract, it was the first real test of whether their championship culture could survive success. I'm home. After all the noise, all the reactions, all the contract math, and all the tension that had started to build around the Knicks, Jose Alvarado answered with 2 words. I'm home. That was it. No long statement, no emotional speech, no public argument with Jalen Brunson, no attempt to explain every detail of the negotiation, no defensive response to people questioning his loyalty, just 2 words, wrapped in orange and blue, sent directly to a city that understood exactly what they meant. But those 2 words carried the weight of an entire life. For Alvarado, home was not a branding slogan. It was not something his agent created to make the deal look better. Home was Brooklyn. Home was Queens. Home was public gyms, loud courts, hard fouls, long subway rides, and people telling him he was too small before he ever got the chance to prove he was big enough. Home was the city that shaped his edge before the NBA ever learned his name. So when he wrote, I'm home, he was not just saying he had signed with the Knicks. He was saying the journey had come full circle. This was the undrafted guard who had watched 60 names get called before his. This was the player who had to fight for two-way respect, rotation minutes, and every inch of trust he ever received. This was the same man who turned defense into identity, hustle into currency, and pressure into opportunity. And now, after years of being overlooked, he was wearing the jersey of the team he grew up watching. That is why the post hit differently. Because underneath all the talk about money, Alvarado was still choosing New York. He could have tested the market harder. He could have turned the story into a bigger public negotiation. He could have leaned into the drama and made the Knicks sweat. But in the end, he stayed. He accepted a deal that gave him security, gave the Knicks flexibility, and allowed both sides to move forward without completely damaging the relationship. Still, I'm home did not erase everything. Brunson's reaction still mattered because it revealed a real pressure point inside the team. Not hatred, not betrayal, not a broken locker room, but a warning. A reminder that winning creates new problems. Before a team wins, everybody talks about sacrifice. After a team wins, sacrifice gets tested by real money, real leverage, and real opportunity. That was the uncomfortable truth. Alvarado had earned the right to ask for more. Brunson had earned the right to question what that meant for the culture. The Knicks had earned the championship, but now they had to earn the maturity required to defend it. Because championship teams do not fall apart only from losing games. Sometimes they fall apart from small misunderstandings that never get fixed. A quiet comment here, a public interview there, a contract decision that one player sees as business and another player sees as a message. If nobody talks honestly, those little cracks can become something bigger. That is why New York had to be careful. Brunson could not let frustration turn into distance. Alvarado could not let pride turn into defensiveness. The front office could not pretend everything was perfect just because the deal got done. They needed real conversations behind closed doors. The kind grown teams have when the cameras are off and the parade is over. And maybe that is what made this situation so important. It gave the Knicks a chance to prove their culture was real. Not just when they were celebrating. Not just when confetti was falling. Not just when everyone was smiling with a trophy in their hand. But when money got complicated. When feelings got tested. When two good players saw the same situation from two different sides. In the end, Alvarado's message was simple. He wanted to stay. And Brunson's message was just as simple. Remember what made this possible. Those two messages do not have to destroy each other. In fact, if handled the right way, they can make the Knicks stronger. Alvarado brings fire, hunger, and hometown pride. Brunson brings leadership, sacrifice, and championship discipline. One reminds the team to fight for every inch. The other reminds the team to protect the bigger mission. Together, that can still work, but only if everyone understands the lesson. I'm home was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of the next test. The Knicks kept their spark. Brunson kept his standard. The city kept one of its own. And now the entire franchise has to prove that loyalty and ambition can live in the same locker room. Because the first championship was about belief. The next one will be about trust, the lesson behind the drama. The biggest lesson from the Jose Alvarado and Jalen Brunson situation is that winning does not end pressure. It changes the shape of it. Before a championship, the question is simple. Can this team get there? After a championship, the question becomes much harder. Can this team stay together without losing what made it special? For the Knicks, that question now sits in the middle of everything. Strategically, keeping Alvarado makes sense. He gives New York a defensive spark, a change of pace guard, a trusted playoff piece, and a player who understands the emotional temperature of Madison Square Garden. He may not be a superstar, but championship teams are not built with stars alone. They are built with players who can win 5-minute stretches when the season is shaking. Alvarado proved he can do that, but Brunson's point also matters. A championship culture needs shared sacrifice. If one player gives up money, another gives up shots, another accepts a smaller role, and another stays ready from the bench. That is how a team becomes bigger than individual ambition. The moment players stop believing the sacrifice is shared fairly, cracks begin to form. That is why this story is not really about $4.5 million. It is about value. It is about respect. It is about timing. It is about the difference between loyalty and leverage. It is about understanding that every player has a life, a family, a short career, and a right to protect his future. But it is also about understanding that great teams require people to think beyond themselves. The humane lesson is simple. Both men deserve respect. Brunson should be respected for putting winning first when he had every reason to chase the biggest number. Alvarado should be respected for fighting from undrafted status to a place where he finally had power over his future. Neither story needs to destroy the other. The peaceful path forward is communication. Honest conversations, no public bitterness, no hidden resentment, no turning teammates into enemies. If the Knicks want to become more than a one-title story, they need Brunson's leadership and Alvarado's fire moving in the same direction. Because banners are not protected by contracts alone. They are protected by trust. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Alvarado was right to secure his future, or do you think Brunson was right to defend the culture of sacrifice? Comment 1 for Alvarado, comment 2 for Brunson, and comment your city so we know where Knicks fans and NBA fans are watching from. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share it with another NBA fan, because the next chapter of this Knicks story may be even more dramatic than the championship itself.